everyone, and welcome to I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, or Life Coach Maureen, as most of you know me. Oh my goodness, you guys. I am so excited. I know, redundant. I say it every time. But my people are here today, and I cannot even explain to you how excited I am about my next guest, because he's in my arena, which is so exciting. And I know I tell you guys all the time that I feel there's this huge gap between traditional therapy and life coaching. And today I have the most beautiful soul who is the bridge to that gap, and he's in the arena, and he is joining me and in the purpose of what I want to do to raise the vibration in this planet. And I think what he's doing is beautiful, and the testimonials of what he's doing is proving how he's changing the world, as well as his own life experience, which is the whole reason I started the podcast. Is I never knew is I've lived it. I want to be the voice my younger self needed. So I think when experts come on this platform and say, I've been there, done that, and I'm paying it forward to help those who are going through it, it's the whole reason we have this human experiences. We're here to help one another. So let me tell you about my next fantastic guest, Dr. David Bonanno, my Italian friend. So, so Dr. David worked in the mental health field since 1993. He grew up as a very anxious kid and became the man of the house at 16 years old when his father died. His mother suffered a crippling stroke, and then she became very abusive. He got through college, but soon after, he became addicted to alcohol and marijuana, and he descended into major depression. Despite this, he earned his doctorate in psychology from Alliant International University in Los Angeles, and he studied under some of the top therapists in America. Yes, listen to that. We can have struggle and we can still succeed. Isn't that dichotomy interesting, people? Because that's life, right? We have these dualities in our lives. We struggle and we succeed. He realized that during his 30 years of spending so much time and money on therapy and doctors, that he had never been correctly diagnosed. All that therapy often made things worse, and the 17 different psych meds that were prescribed to him failed to help. He then established a thriving private practice, and he started Bonanno Medical Healthcare in 2016. Since then, his practice, BMHC, has helped over 16,000 traumatized people qualify for medical marijuana by evaluating them for PTSD. And his website, we'll talk about at the end, his book and his website, and how you guys can all get a hold of him and reach out to him. So here on I Never Knew, we talk about your knee story. And a knee story is just like that moment in your life that brought you to your knees, where it was that moment of, man, I'm at my knees and I don't know what to do, and I know something has to change. Interestingly, you're studying psychology. You know something has to be changed, and yet here you are in addiction and realizing all this trauma and nothing's helping for you. Tell us about your knee story.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much
And
for
welcome.
having that. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so like, I'm so engulfed, like, tell me everything. But hi, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you. um, I would say it's probably I was like 30 years old, and I hadn't gone back to grad school yet. All my friends were getting married and having kids and buying houses, and I just couldn't be in a healthy relationship to save my life. And I was addicted to food and weed and alcohol. And my mom was really getting on me. Like I told her I wanted to go to grad school, and she said, I don't know why you think you could do that. You've never succeeded at anything in your life.
Oh,
And so, I mean, And I just like didn't know what to do with that. And I remember going to my friend's wedding, and then afterwards, the next day, I felt so lonely. Like, I mean, I had loneliness was not a stranger to me for a long time, but I mean, I was like on the in the depths, and I just was laying in my bed and just aching. And my cat was laying on top of me, and I was like, "You're my only friend in the world." It just felt like that, you know. And so I was thinking, I told a friend of mine, like, I think I do want to go to grad school, but I'm going to be like 36 when I graduate. And then the guy was like, "Well, how old are you going to be 4 years from now if you don't go to grad school?" And
Hey.
that was awesome. And so I mean, I did always kind of believe in myself because like when I went to school, my teachers were really enthusiastic and supportive. And then I'd come home, and both my parents, for whatever reason, they would just kind of stomp on my dreams and tell me, "You're not that smart." And I mean, I'm still struggling a little bit to figure out why, but because I had some people believe in me, I think, then I just kind of believed in myself, and I really do think I would have maybe committed suicide if I just didn't have this sort of like obsessive drive to figure out finally what the hell is wrong with me. And yeah, going to school did not teach me that answer. Oh, took a long
I
time.
love that. I love that the knee story. And what I love the most is that you had a cat moment, and the reason that everything I do surrounding the dogs is I had the dog moment. And getting out of domestic violence and having narcissistic relationships, I finally like stopped the madness cycle of being in relationships since I was 18, and it was me and my dog. And you had the cat moment where I was just like, damn, my dog loves me. What's wrong with me? I love that you had that, and that you had at least still that moment of belief in yourself. And I get that. I had sort of that same upbringing with my parents. I wanted to be an actress, and I remember my father said, you have to have the it factor, and it's like one in a million to be discovered and to be an actress. And he said, you don't have it. And it was
Yeah.
like crushing, and I'm like, okay, well then I'll just get married at 18 and get pregnant. Okay, that worked out really well. Here we are.
Yeah.
So I love that you still had the wherewithal even through all of that. So how did you come out of the alcoholism, and how did you maintain so well to do the graduate school and all of the education while still maintaining the addictions? I mean, that's a hard balance. How'd you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I don't know, like
You
I
don't
mean,
even know.
I'm not a traditional learner. Like I have ADD pretty bad. And so I would go to every class. I mean, and of course, never be drunk during that or anything like that. But I wouldn't like pour myself into the papers or the tests or whatever. But I would always listen to the professors, and I just absorbed what I thought was important. And yeah, I read some of the books. I'm not making myself sound all that smart, but like I think I really do see things in a different way than other people, and that's probably my real strength. Like that's where I'm coming from as a psychologist, is that I really want to show the world a different perspective of what PTSD really is. And I just couldn't have learned what I did from the books. Like so yeah, I did become the first person in America to help people to get medical marijuana by evaluating them and diagnosing with mental health disorders. And so, yeah, I've personally talked to over 10,000 people. And then I just learned so much doing that and so much about myself. And so, yeah, school, I mean, I passed.
No, I completely get it. Having ADD myself, being diagnosed with ADD,
Oh,
having a
okay.
child with ADHD,
Yeah.
neurodiversity, first of all, our brains are wired differently. I think we see the world in cliff notes. I do. I think
Yeah.
we skim through a lot, and we catch certain things that we need. We are very visual. I can completely understand that. So people who are neurotypical might not understand, and they might need more of the detail. So I completely get that. Um, I I and my son, we went from being on ADHD medication, which I felt was synthesized meth, and we did.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we got a pediatrician. Finally, he was diagnosed at 7, and finally, when he was 15, we had a pediatrician who said if I could diagnose marijuana, I would, and we were able to get a
Wow.
uh, uh, thank goodness in Arizona at that time, we were able to get a medical doctor, marijuana doctor to prescribe it. And that's when he went on marijuana, and it saved him, and it really made a difference. So
Oh,
I
that's great.
love that you did that. So something that I read on your, first of all, guys, I want to tell you what in he's described as he is the freshest, boldest voice in trauma psychology today. And I love how you're described. And there's something on your blog that you had written, and it said science cannot describe PTSD. So tell us about that, because it's so complex. So tell us how your methods help differently with trauma than typical therapy does.
I really do appreciate you doing your homework and finding out about me and asking such good questions. So if you go online and look up PTSD, you see the same definition on every website, and it's not a definition, it's just a list of symptoms. So people don't really have this sort of working, convenient, memorable understanding of what it is. And I mean, like even trauma experts, you could ask them, what is it? And then they can't really give you an answer. But after talking to so many people and figuring out that I have it, which by the way, Maureen, like I got diagnosed with anxiety or depression or bipolar or dysthymic disorder or like all kinds of different things. And nobody ever thought to call it PTSD, even though I went through hell. And and of course, all of my therapists just zoned in on every little thing that ever went wrong with me, but for some reason never called it PTSD. I didn't think it was PTSD. I didn't want to be seen as comparing myself to war heroes or anything like that. And so anyway, the way that I describe PTSD for people is that simply your fight or flight system is overactive and it turns on when you don't need it and it takes over. And that's the thing is like your logical brain is designed to go offline when you're triggered or threatened or stressed out. And so that's where the metaphor comes in with my book of the robo cat, because like part of your brain is a robot. It's totally logical. We all want to identify with that part of our brain. We all want to think of ourselves as logical people. And then we just end up doing so much stupid shit.
Right, right.
And so yeah, but science cannot describe meditation or mindfulness or dreaming. And although those things are very real, it can't really describe the subconscious. And I think that people like, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy is the most studied therapy because it's the most easily understood and the most easily studied. Whereas with the subconscious, Freud kind of called that to the world's attention 140 years ago, and he's brilliant, and he is the father, grandfather of psychology, as far as I'm concerned. But then he got all distorted, and people just kind of have still gotten away from the role of the subconscious. So what I do is my therapy uses eye movements. It's based on EMDR, but it's definitely not EMDR. EMDR is talk therapy that is sprinkled with eye movements, and it really doesn't have too much of a direction. And they're still focused on your cognitive beliefs and the way that you think. Whereas I maintain that PTSD has absolutely nothing to do with logic or with your logical brain. And like I said, it's designed to go offline. So when you're traumatized, it's really, I think, Pavlovian conditioning. It's just as simple as that. And then you can't. So I mean, like I had an incident with the car where I almost me and my family almost died, and so I can't just tell myself it's probably not going to happen again, and then expect my logical brain to rule the day and my emotional brain, which is my cat brain, to just be fine with that. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah, that's where I come in, is like trying to interface directly with that part of the brain in which PTSD occurs.
I love all of that, and I integrate a lot of that in my coaching because as we talked about before we got on, why I just love what you're doing is you're bridging that gap where you traditional therapy was like modalities and we have to stay in those, we had to stay in. You can't talk about your experiences. You weren't allowed to talk about what you've been through. You had to stay in the Freudian and all those methods. And now I love that you're talking, meditation and mindfulness. I'm certified in CBT and ACT therapy, and which I absolutely think ACT therapy is wonderful, cognitive distortions. And so we get to now integrate all that different stuff, the EMDR. The thing that I love, like you said, that I integrate is because you have rational mind, which is like you said, it's only the facts, it's only the logical mind. And then you have the emotional, which is what we're born with. It's the childlike reactional mind. And then in the middle, we have the wise mind. And the idea is to go through life getting to that wise mind where we can rationalize things as well as have emotion behind that. And so I love I love your idea of it's an integration, right? Of dealing with PTSD. And it's really interesting because I think there are a
Well,
lot of psychology terms that we overuse, right? Right? I
Well,
feel
so I just want to be clear. Like, obviously, there is a time and place for addressing those cognitive distortions, and cognitive behavioral therapy is awesome, and it's really great for like overall training your mind and for preventing anxiety and stuff like that. I'm saying that when you have PTSD and it's to a certain degree of severity, then you can't really use that stuff. Like
right.
like it just doesn't apply to everything. So yeah, like even meditation, mindfulness, those are awesome things. But if they are presented as a cure for PTSD, then I take exception to that because I mean, I'm just somebody who's tried everything
Yeah.
and so much of the stuff didn't work for me. So then I ended up blaming myself more and thinking like, well, really, maybe I really am beyond help. And I think that can be just such a terrible dark place for people.
Mhm.
So yeah, like it's tough. I mean, we all there's so many people telling you what to do and how to think, and then you're trying to relate to people and they don't get you, and it's a really lonely place, isn't it, when you're really desperate for answers and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. And the reason that I wrote my book is to help people to understand the limits of their logical brain, and how yes, you are going to do some crazy things sometimes because your emotional fight or flight brain will take over sometimes. And then don't hate yourself for that. Just like try to work with it. I mean, I really did hate myself, Maureen, for decades, and I just blamed myself for everything. And then that's why I wrote the book, is so people don't have to go through what I did. I hope that makes sense.
No, completely. I love that. Thank you so much for clarifying that because I feel like PTSD can be so shame driven. And I feel like
Yeah,
it's that such a deeper subconscious level. And it's like being in a panic attack. And in the moment of a panic attack, me going, now stop doing that. Stop
yeah,
doing that. You
yeah,
can't do in that moment, you
yeah,
can't do that. All we can do is
yeah.
just like, let it pass. Let's just, the teeny tiniest thing we can do is just breathe. Not even it's the very simple of we're not going to get to the root of it in the moment of the panic attack. So I completely resonate with what you're saying. um and
That's a great point.
I had a kind of an interesting thing happen the other day. So my middle daughter just had a child, a baby girl. We moved
Awesome,
from Arizona to Austin because she was pregnant. We moved within 60 days. I was like, okay, sell the house, move to Austin,
awesome,
because she was pregnant. Now my first daughter had children, so I have three grandchildren. We got custody of my oldest grandson. He came with us, but it had been very traumatic and very, very difficult with the first grandchildren. We weren't allowed to see them at times. They were held away from us. It was
oh,
very, very, very traumatic with those grandchildren. So I'm always calling my daughter here and saying, "Hey, can I come over and see the baby?" And I realized how much I call it GPTSD, grandma PTSD. And what I told my daughter was, every time I text you and ask you if I can come over and see the baby, I prepare myself for you to say no. And every time she says, "Of course," I'm like, "Yay, oh good." And she's like, "I would never say no." But I've prepared myself to flight, to protect myself from the disappointment. And that is interesting sort of a view. And my husband actually is also, he also has it too, because he goes, "Did she say yes? Is she okay with us seeing the baby?" And my this daughter is like, "I would have you come see her. I want you to come see her." But see how we were sort of traumatized by not being able to have that contact. Now we've carried this over to this relationship. Do you think that's a form of PTSD?
It's definitely, yeah, that's a trauma reaction for sure. And it's definitely an unconscious or subconscious phenomenon that you can't just talk yourself out of. And I think it really kind of parallels the choices that a lot of us make, and don't even realize it. Like, we hear all the time, especially in the United States, which is great. Like, yeah, you should shoot for the stars and you should just take the world by the balls and just like, but no, like, people who failed and who've been stepped on, like you and me, like, we don't want to have that pain again. And it's not even a choice. Like, it's not like we don't want it, we just stay away from it. So, like, one of the biggest problems I've had is getting out of my own way and sticking my neck out there and trying to do things. And it's just been such a battle, because I mean, there's part of me that just can't be stopped, and then every other part of me is trying to stop it.
Oh, that is it. If you could sum up human behavior at its best, it's like, I
Yeah.
want this thing, but I have a wall that says don't do it. It
Yeah.
really isn't that the duplicity that we deal with every day in life. Is I see it a lot as a relationship and dating coach. Is I want love, but I don't want to be hurt. And it's so, there's such a fine line, that I see people like sabotage themselves. So a lot of us will go out there, and I was there doing this myself, which makes me the expert in dating, and relationships. Is I would pretend I didn't care about having a relationship when really I was a love addict, right? So
Oh,
I could
yeah.
just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go out there and I can just, I don't care about sex. I don't need a connection with someone, but deep inside, I hoped I could have a connection and a forever with someone, but I could just have sex with someone because that's the most I could get. That's the most I could feel. I knew I could just feel at least a little bit of love, but in my brain it said, "Oh no, I don't want that. I'm distanced from them." And I see that a lot in relationships. Our brain says, "I'm calling the shots," but truly our subconscious is like, "I really want love. I'm seeking love." Right? So I think that's
Totally.
common.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to choosing a mate and all that stuff, yeah, I think it's almost all subconscious. And then the work that you're doing must be kind of challenging, because you're talking like your conscious mind is talking to your client's conscious mind about their subconscious mind, and there isn't a way to really interface with that directly. And that's where I would come to a stop with my therapy with my clients, because we would be talking and we'd clear up a lot of stuff, and then we just kind of stop our progress when it came to those trauma reactions. And then, how many times can you say, well, try not to have that trauma reaction, or try to remind yourself you're safe. You can't, that's not going to, really get it done. And that's where my eye movement therapy comes in, because it really helps you get to the heart of the matter. Can I just give you a super quick example of that?
Oh yeah.
So, like, I had this woman who, and like I said before the show, like, I kind of envy the work that you do, because you're focusing on how to help people succeed, whereas I think the typical therapist is trained to help people to not be so messed up, if you know what I mean. Like, instead of promoting wellness, we're trying to remedy pathology, and I think that, um, I wish that we were a little more oriented in the way that your profession is. But anyway, I had this woman, she grew up in chaos, and then she really craved stability. So she met this accountant, and then in her heart she felt like, oh, this is the guy, he's going to give me a stable life and all this. But he lost his job and he started drinking and he became a basket case. So she was intellectualizing for herself, the pros and the cons. What should I keep him, where should I go? She was intellectualizing with her friends and her family, and then she expected to intellectualize with me. So what I did was I had her move her eyes and try to think of a metaphor that really captured what it felt like. And what I'm doing there is I'm trying to get her out of her robot brain and into her heart, because that decision of, who you mate with or what house you buy or what career you have, that's not really your head, that's your heart, right? Or your cat brain. So anyway, she thought of a metaphor. She said, I feel like I kissed a prince and he turned into a frog. And so then we did some more eye movements, and then she eventually got to the point where she was like, what? I really am exhausted. I just want to give that frog back to the pet store and let them take care of him. And then that's how she really finally knew. So it's such a subconscious thing, right?
Yes. Well, see, this is the beauty. We need to marry our practices, because this is so beautiful, because I've had clients where it was so deep seated, the trauma or self-harm, or their belief that they were unworthy, that I've had to say, I really believe you need therapy. You need some psychotherapy. You need something deeper than what I can do. They come to me when they're ready to move forward. If they aren't able to move forward and they're consistently playing the same record, then they need you, and they need that trauma healing. And then, like you said, when you're at the point where it's just a repetition, or you feel like, well, they're healed, then they come with me, and then we work on that self-love and that self-confidence and that journey to, you have to love you. And what I do is we work on being our own best friend, and we work on goals for doing things outside of ourself that bring us joy, and finding our purpose and our passion. And then we attract those who are at that same vibration as us, and it just happens.
Yeah.
I don't want people
Yeah.
seeking what they're lacking. So I make sure that anyone who does dating coaching with me is, no, it's not two halves or a whole. It's, you are whole, and then you attract another whole person. And when you're at your best, you attract someone at their best, and then you're just better as a couple, and you're healthier as a couple, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
I would,
that's why I was so excited to talk to you today, because it's like, we get it. We get those stages of healing, right?
yeah, I wish I had you as a dating coach. It took me until I was 40 until I met my wife, and I was just going out with so many damaged people, and of course I was myself, but that's the vibration, that's the frequency I was vibrating at. And I like how you teach people skills, and you're trying to focus on where do they want to go. Like, I had a therapist tell me one time, like, she would take a huge detailed family history, and she'd like prided herself on being able to explain to people why they were so screwed up. And she said, well, how can you fix a problem if you don't understand what caused it? And then I said, people are not like cars. It's not like you trace it all down to the starter solenoid and then you replace that and then their whole life runs beautifully. Like, I think what therapy should be more like is, if you're in Arizona and you want to get to Texas, do you need to be studying maps of Arizona and talking to everybody in Arizona and understanding Arizona? Or do you need to be shown where Route 10 is? You know what I mean? And then you just drive there.
I love that. I love that so, so much. And it's so funny when I sometimes when I meet with clients, it's so cute, because they'll say, with you just see this demeanor where they'll go, I have to confess something, or I did something. You just see like the shame, right? And they'll
Yeah,
say, I did this thing where you see they went into an old habit, especially when it comes to dating. And we do this thing over and over. And I believe we repeat experiences until we get it. I did it. I did the same thing over and over. The insanity cycle, right? Doing the same thing, expecting the same result.
right.
And that's okay because we repeat it until we get it, right? We didn't learn how to tie our shoe once or ride a bike one time. We had to do it over and over. That's the human brain, is repetition till we got it. And I tell people that all the time. And when I say to them, that's okay. So what? You're where you're supposed to be. And you know what? You recognized it. And when I say, hey, you did a great job by recognizing it, the first step is to recognize it. And the more you recognize it, then we get closer to integrating the change and the relief. The relief is, oh, I don't have to feel shame over it. And I think if listeners get anything from this, you and I can share in this, that there's no shame in the life you're living. You're allowed to do this because that's the human experience, is what you're going through. We all are going through it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, for me, once I did, yeah, so I did have to keep repeating it, but it's kind of funny because it wasn't like this logical progression where my relationships were getting healthier and healthier. It was like crazy, 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 boom, the one. And then and I did have to go through that stuff. I love how, like, when will have regrets or whatever, and then my wife will say, "Yeah, but if you didn't go through all that stuff, then you wouldn't be here with me." Like, she had 2 kids at the time, and I actually we lost one of our kids at 19 years old. We could talk about that too. I didn't list that as part of the traumas that I went through, but um it I was once I got into a healthy place. When I was unhealthy, I was thinking like, man, once I get into a healthy relationship, I'm still going to be like pissed that I had to go through all that stuff to get there. But no, that's not how I felt. Like when I got with my wife, I was just so happy to be there. I didn't care how long it took me to get there. So I'm trying to, yeah, give some hope to your people.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I'm with you on that, because the gratitude I have now for my husband is immense. And we thank each other, and him too, being what he had gone through to get to where we are, because we've been married since 2018 and been together for 7 years. So we're fairly new at this too. We didn't meet until I was 46. So this was only 7 years together now too. We met late in life too. I had never been out of a relationship since I was 18 years old till I was 45. So
Yeah.
I my identity was being in a relationship. And so I finally took this hiatus out of a relationship, and I didn't know who I was. And it was like identity crisis, like, who am I if I'm not in a relationship? That's when I finally had to be like, come on, you got to learn to love who you are without having someone on your arm. Again, trauma. I didn't know who I was, because in my family, you weren't anybody if you weren't a couple. And so that took a lot of learning. But you're right. My husband and I thank each other for taking the garbage out. My husband thanks me every single night for making dinner. I thank him every night for doing dishes. He thanks
That's
me for doing laundry. And I'll go, of course. And he'll go, nope, don't say of course. Say you're welcome. It's
awesome.
so cool. The mutual respect I learned that I didn't see in my own home growing up. I learned the way you speak to one another, because I was sort of in my first marriage, there was domestic violence. Um, I was sort of just an object, in my first marriage of 10 years. And then the following relationships, there was again narcissists and psychological abuse, to the point of stalking and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was aggravated aggravated, what was it? I forget what they call it, but he ended up going to jail for a while for.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, my picker was not good. A lot of codependent behavior there. So I never saw myself as valued in a relationship. And so to be valued, and like you said, I had the same thing, crazy, 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 and then good. But I didn't get the good until I realized I was worthy of the good. And so you and I really, really relate to that same thing. And it's because we had very similar upbringings where we had that view of abuse, or that view of, codependence. We did so much for everybody else that we put ourselves on
Yeah.
that back burner. So
And
um
now we're in the profession of taking care of other people too, right?
right, right. And we
Yeah.
used it for good. And I think
Yeah.
that's the whole why I think everyone that listens to this, all of my listeners and all of the guests that come on here, that's the beauty of everyone that I think crosses my path. If when you take those traumas, when you take those life experiences and you're giving that to people to say, I'm not holding on to that, I'm not bitter, I'm better, and I can take that and make it my purpose. And my purpose is I didn't go through it for nothing. And that's what I love is I think listeners, if you've listened to me for any amount of time, I mean, this is episode 104, I think. If you've listened to me for any amount of time, I remember when the final straw for me getting out of my marriage was that he cheated on me. Not, the abuse. I always said that the shame factor was if I didn't leave the marriage because of the abuse, because then I looked like a fool because he was abusing me. But if I left because he was cheating, then he looked like the fool. And so when I finally left because he cheated, I was talking to a friend and I remember just saying, just devastated, he stepped on my heart and he broke it and, he put it in the dirt. And I said in that devastation, if I have to go through this just to help one person, I will. And it was
Awesome. Wow.
in that moment, why would I even how was that somewhere that seed, that little mustard seed of purpose was speaking? And that's so weird to think back to that time. I mean, I was 29 years old, 28 years old at the time. It was there in me. And so to be able to have it come to fruition and to be able to talk to you and to be able to write the books and to be able to coach people now, it's like super cool that your higher self and spirit, and whatever your belief of a higher power is, um it was there. You just don't know what tomorrow or next year, 10 years, 20 years brings. You didn't know it when your mom said, why do you want to do that? You've never succeeded. Or, when you were drinking, and, it's cool that that little seed of belief you had in yourself would bring you to helping thousands and thousands of people. And those testimonials that I read where everybody's like, he's amazing. You have to go to him. If you're looking for the person that's going to do something that's so outside of traditional therapy, he's your guy. It's really, really fun to experience life in this way, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, you can't just get, I mean, we all have to go through our process. And um, when I was really down and people would try to help me and say positive things that I just wasn't ready to hear, I think sometimes that made me feel worse. But yeah, like overall, it is wonderful to be here. Well, I mean, just having gone through all that stuff, I think a great therapist or coach or person is somebody who can take their liabilities and turn them into assets. And I love how you really made sense out of it. I think, Maureen, I think that's one of the most important things about trauma is being able to make sense of it, however you do that. Like, so I had a veteran who got shot and wounded in Afghanistan, and it didn't really have PTSD because there was good guys and bad guys, and he's not there anymore, and it just didn't really affect him that much. But then he bought a house and raised a family, and his neighbor sexually drugged him and sexually assaulted him, and he could not make sense of that. And so that really messed him up. I think it's so important because if you can't make sense of something, then you start to think like, well, what the heck else is going to happen, right? I mean, like, if life is that crazy, then maybe I'm really not safe. Whereas if you can use your spirituality or however you can, you choose to sort of contextualize what has happened. I think that's how you can finally get peace again. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does. And you just triggered something in my head because our human brain wants facts. Our human
Yeah.
brain wants to make sense of something. It's like with COVID, it's like we wanted scientific proof of stuff. We wanted proof immunizations were going to work. It's where we were all divided, right? Like, is this really an epidemic? Is this is this a conspiracy? This is what divides us, is, do I believe the science? Do I not believe it? Do I believe in politics? Do I not believe in it? So you're right. So our human brain says, I want to make sense of this. When I can't, so he could make sense in war. I can say good guys, bad guys. I signed up for this. I agreed to this. But then he couldn't make sense of the other part of it. And then the trauma stayed stuck, right?
Yeah.
It's where, in what I learned with ACT therapy, the acceptance part of being a human is what helps us move forward. If I can accept that I can't get the facts always about life, if I can just accept that I'm not always going to know what someone is thinking, I'm not always going to know why someone behaves the way that they do, I'm not always going to know someone else's experience or perception of what they lived, then I can move forward. And I think acceptance is a huge piece of possibly moving forward past trauma. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's totally dead on. So one of the things I talk about with my clients is clean pain versus dirty pain. So clean pain is that it's really stinks and it's really sad. And dirty pain is like resentment or guilt or anger or even that confusion. And that is what's going to keep us stuck. And it does come down to acceptance, because oftentimes people would really, they just hate to feel sad, because I mean, of course it's a negative feeling, but you also have to admit that you're powerless, or that you were powerless if you're grieving something. And then if you're mad, like, well, that shouldn't have happened, or it shouldn't be this way, or I should have done this, or they should have done that. You're shooting all over yourself, as Albert Ellis used to say. But also, yeah, you're not accepting reality. If you feel guilty, even, you're in a different reality, because you would have done something if the circumstances were different. Well, they're not different. They are what they are. So, and if you're angry, then you're thinking about an alternate reality where things should be different. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that. If you can get to a place of acceptance, you do have to admit that you're powerless, and nobody wants to feel that way. But yeah, you can move on and accept life, and then you don't have to be stuck there forever, reliving it.
I love that you're shooting all over yourself, and I love Albert Ellis. I follow so much of his philosophical stuff. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think you're gonna love this. So I have such a different view of my family's beliefs, and I always felt I was placed in the wrong family because I just didn't understand how they behave, what they believed. We were always butting heads, and I think I feel that I've always been a highly sensitive person, and so I felt they didn't understand me. And in a special on Netflix, Alanis Morissette said her father said, "We just didn't know what to do with you." And I feel my parents said that. I feel like my parents have felt that way about me my entire life. And I remember feeling at 6 or 7, they didn't get me. And so my entire life I've always felt like they just didn't understand me. And so my husband, being super wise, so he's a logical brain, he's an engineer, and he
Hmm.
always is able to put things so much better in the rational view and get me out of my highly sensitive emotional brain. And so I always had all these issues with my parents, and I would be so frustrated, and I would come to him and say, I don't understand why they don't do this, or why they do this, or they don't do this. And he would say this, and you are going to love this. He would say, "You have about as much control wishing they would say or do something differently as you do wishing that they were taller." And so when I
Awesome.
would
Yeah.
when I would come to him and be like, I wish they would be happy about my success. It took my mother a couple of years to read my book. And I was like, I wish they were happier. I got an award, a book award, a
Ah.
block, like a block from their house in my hometown. I'm like, I wish they would go and celebrate it. Um, and
Oh
I
my
would,
gosh.
I would be super excited. And his response was always, I wish they were taller. And
That's awesome.
it would shut me up. And I'd go, you're right. I have no control over that, and neither do they. Neither
That's
do they.
awesome.
Without that self-awareness, or without even they weren't doing it intentionally. They just
That's
were
awesome.
oblivious of the need to be different, or that my need for them to be different. So I thought you would enjoy that. And that was that acceptance part. And from that point on, I never needed them to be different. I just accepted they couldn't be taller, and they didn't know they needed to be taller for me. And then our relationship is fantastic because I
That's great.
accepted them for who they are and I love them. So interesting, right?
That is great. Yeah, I came to a point where I had to kind of lower my expectations of people in general, and then I was happier. I was like people really do kind of suck. And then I was thinking about myself, and I kind of suck too. So hey.
I love your honesty and unfilteredness. That's why I knew we were kindred spirits. Um, oh my gosh. So I have loved this conversation, and I know you and I are going to be connected from here on out.
Awesome.
I just adore you, and I love how like-minded we are. And I
Yeah.
take everything back I say about therapists from now on. I I love me a doctor therapist, a Dr. David therapist, but you're the only one. I'm just saying, no, I love therapists. I'm just teasing. Anyone
Well,
who's doing good to raise mental awareness and help people, I genuinely respect. I kid, but I want everybody to know where to find you. So let's do your promotion, and then I have a fun little segment I want to ask you, so we can lighten it as we go out. So tell us what's the name of your book, where to find you, how to reach out to you, anything fun like that. So I mean, you're so fun, why would they not want to practice with you? So
yeah, hey. So yeah, if you were to go to Amazon and look up RoboCat book, then it'll come up. It's called Your Brain is a RoboCat, Finally Understand Your Trauma Response. And then my website is drbonanno.com. And the reason I say that is because there's two N's at the end. Everybody spells it wrong, but in Italian, you're supposed to say Bonanno like that. And so it's doctor spelled out, and then BONANNO.com. And then, yeah, you can find everything there, all my socials and all that stuff. And then, yeah, this is really fun.
and I will put all of that in the episode link. So guys, I'll make sure that you guys can find his information. So as we go out, I'm starting a new segment today with you, and I think it was just perfect, and I think I got inspiration. So my new segment is called I'm Just Weird.
Okay,
And
yeah, I have no problem with this.
and being that I am neurodivergent, and I did take a quiz, and I am highly likely to be high functioning autism,
Huh.
I want to know, what is a quirky thing or idiosyncrasy that you do that you think is unusual, that other people do not do? And I'll give you an example while you can think, because I hate putting people on the spot. For me, it's going around the house at night and checking all of the locks at least 3 times. And that may be OCD as well. So, what is your quirky idiosyncrasy?
Well, I, I'm kind of boyish. Like like, I'm still a little boy in some ways, and, people don't get it sometimes. Like, I ride this moped around, and I look like a dork, and some people think it's just like, "Why the hell would he do that?" But I here I am, like, motorcycles are passing me, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm way smarter than they are because 'cause I'm different, and I get to look at all the stuff as I'm going and everything." And, like, I have a six-year-old daughter, and I tell her, like, I love it when she kicks me and hits me and bites me, and that's ridiculous. And, like, her therapist was like, What? Why would you do that?" My daughter saw a therapist for a little bit, and but it's just I really like so, like, I just find fun and stuff. And, like, people used to stand up, like, if they would hear me doing therapy, like, they'd hear us laughing all the time. They're like, "What the hell are you doing in there?" And I'm like, "Well, we could be laughing or we could be crying, like, you gotta stay in touch with the kid part of life." And so, I don't know, maybe that answering questions.
Yes, I love it. I love it. You embrace your inner child every single day. And
Yeah,
I think laughter is medicine, and it obviously,
yeah,
it's got those endorphins, and we need those
yeah.
happiness chemicals, I think, every day. And I think laughter heals more than anything else. So I think that's a fabulous, fabulous quirkiness idiosyncrasy. And I think it's better than medicine. Who needs healing biochemistry when you've got laughter and goofiness? Because I'm
Yeah,
I'm
man.
I'm on board with that. So I honor you and I respect you and I thank you so much for being on today for the hour of your life that you gifted to me and our listeners today. So stay there with me. Thank you so much. Thank you. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed him. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, thank you guys for being here today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. And you know where to find me for your dating, your coaching, your life coaching, your confidence coaching, all that fun stuff. Lifecoachmaureen.com for any speaking, all of that good stuff. My books, Amazon, at My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach. And I have a big surprise coming up for you guys. I have written a children's book, and we are in process of publishing right now, and illustrating. So I'm super excited. I will announce the title of it and how you can get that book. So super excited about that one. Again, for all your healthy doggy treats, apparel, safety products, mydogiseverything.net. And I love you all for listening. Please leave your comments if you want to be a guest. Any comments, anything you have for Dr. David, you can also reach me as well. I welcome positive comments and love sent his way. Let's see what else we have for you. That's about it for this week. So until next week, I love you all. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And most of all, take care of those furry babies. Please adopt. Do not shop. If you need help, any mental health, or if you're suicidal or you know someone who is, please dial 988 and please reach out for some help. And please, there's no shame and no stigma related to mental health because we care about you and we want you here in this earth, on this earth, in this planet, and in this world. You have so much to give. So we care about you. Until next week, love you all. Take care, and we'll talk to you later.
Woohoo!